Before we go any further, just take a moment to listen to this. It speaks for itself. It's gut wrenching. The voice work here is just, it's phenomenal. It honestly, if you don't feel some form of emotion to like that scream, this desperation and sadness, I don't know what to say. Because inherently, what's going on in this moment is just honestly, it exposes one of the biggest flaws within isekai, anime, light novels, and manga. And what do I mean by that? Well, it is very, very, very rare, especially in nowadays with stories, to see a character literally desperately fighting to go back to their previous world. And let's think about this. Some of the best stories in this day and time, when it comes to these type of stories, being reincarnated or transported, characters effectively give up trying to get back to their previous world. Or they just accept it instantly within the first 2 episodes, and they live their new life, all happy, content, finding new, friends, family, bonds, etc., which is fine. It's healthy to do, to be able to accept sometimes your circumstances, but sometimes it's like, what if these characters that were forced to be in these other worlds, either transported or reincarnated fixed to Truck-kun, what if, okay, they had a fulfilling life? What if in their previous life, let's say in modern day Japan, they had family, they had friends, they had a life worth living, they weren't shut-ins, they had everything going well for them, they maybe have had a lover. What if just one random day that was just taken from them? They were walking down the road and then suddenly they're teleported into this brand new world. And at first glance, it would be cool. Like, oh, cool, there's magic and stuff. But then you're like, the reality sets in. I'll never see my friends again. I will never see my family again. I will never see my lover again. I will never see, let's say, my favorite animal again. And all this starts to weigh in on your mind, breaking you apart, eating away your very core essence of your person. And as time drags on, as you're isolated and alone and realize that you're one of the only people probably in this entire world that has been reincarnated or transported to this world, that isolation grows stronger. And then it desperately drives you to try to fight back and to get back to your previous world. And that has been the driving force behind Nanahoshi's actions since the very beginning, since the first day she arrived in the world of Mushoku Tensei. And so, the voice acting here on display perfectly, I think, expresses what Nanahoshi is truly feeling. When she's screaming, "I can't go home," and you just see her desperately trying any way she can possibly do that, it's sad. It is legitimately emotional, because I think that fundamentally what this does is it shows that we need more writing like this within stories. We need writing to where characters can fight their way back to be in their previous world, because most of the time, yes, it's a fantasy and people want to experience this whole new world, but sometimes that world can be very cruel, and why would you want to stay in that world that doesn't really offer you anything when you can obviously go back where you had everything? You can see those circumstances, and I think that that uniqueness of Nanahoshi really shines within this episode, and it really makes me hope that thanks to the popularity of Mushoku Tensei, and just how popular it's gotten as of recent thanks to its anime, I do hope that this kindles some form of spark in writers to use this element, because there can't be always just an MC that's transported to another world or reincarnated and is able to just instantly accept that, oh, this world is mine now, and, here I am, and don't want to fight back for what they once had. Oftentimes, the excuse here is that the character was a shut-in and they didn't have anything going on in their previous life, so being reincarnated basically omits all that from their previous life because it doesn't really matter. But I wish more stories would dive into the aspect that they did have something and they did lose something. I think that would be very compelling. Even if they can't get back to their world, it would be nice to see that level of writing used more often. ReZero does do this a little bit in Season 2 of the anime. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. But the point of the matter is that ReZero does dive into this element. I wish more anime and light novels did that, because I think it's very important, because even if you're the most isolated individual, there is bound to be something that you're attached to some degree from your previous world. And it's sad that you don't see that often within these type of stories. So, just shout outs for, obviously, the author of Mushoku Tensei doing this. I know Mushoku Tensei is technically an old story that came out a long time ago and was finished, but the point doesn't change. That I hope that this sparks, that level of writing again from other authors. Now, let's get into one of the other aspects that this scene definitely does. And one of those aspects is this scene right here, where Rudy looks at a dagger that was on Nanahoshi's person. This shows the extremes that she would go to be rid of this world. How she does not want to be within this world of Mushoku Tensei. And let's talk about that. What kind of life has she lived up to this point? Why is she like this at this point within the story? And one way to really consider this fact is that she has nothing. Her very existence is isolation within this world. And why is that? Well, since day one, as I talked about, it's clear that she's been fighting to get back to her previous world. But in this world, because of how much time she spent to try to get back, she hasn't formed any bonds, any relationships, any connections. She doesn't even have the gift of magic, as we have seen. She doesn't have stuff like that to be excited. She doesn't have a cheat skill. She doesn't have anything that makes her overpowered or broken. She is just an ordinary girl from Japan that literally has nothing. And on top of that, she is a side character. And when you see this, it is extremely depressing. And it makes sense now why she is like this. She has nothing in this world. And the only reason Rudy isn't like her in this moment is because he has people. And that is what this episode really wants to shine, is that how far Rudy has come as a character, but how far Nanahoshi has fallen as a person as well. And I think one of the big highlights here is that Rudy tries desperately in any way to be able to rekindle that spark within her to not give up on life itself by looking at the magic circle that she's constructing to be able to get back home, calling in everyone, all the support that he possibly can to be able to help out Nanahoshi. It's a very powerful and impactful scene, and a lot of people will look at this and be like, wow, that was very quick. Why did, Nanahoshi get over this depression and sadness so quickly and instantly get confident and happy at the end of the episode? People might think that this is a whiplash of emotion and might think that this was a little bit rushed or forced, but that is definitely not the fact. One of the big things that this episode does, and I think it's very apparent, is that it does showcase that there is a passing of time here, that multiple days and nights pass of them working on this, trying to find a solution for her to be, happy once again. It's not something that just happened within like 12 hours or a day. It literally was on the course of probably a long period of time, maybe a few weeks. But even then, regardless of that, it also gets into the human emotion itself, which is depression and sadness and the urge to give up at one moment, and then the next moment, you're able to pick yourself up again like nothing ever happened. It's a key thing about humans in general that is about our psychology, is that, you probably have heard or have had this feeling in the past where it's like, just, you're depressed, you're sad or something. Let's just say something happened, okay? It's something that really irked you, made you super, super upset. Either be a person, maybe you stubbed your toe, whatever. You're really upset. And then all of a sudden, just randomly, not even thinking about it, you're not upset no more. Just, it's gone. It's gone. Either it was 30 minutes later, a day later, 6 hours later, maybe years later. The way people process emotions and the way people handle depression or moments of sadness or extreme emotional distress is very different from individual to individual. In this case, Rudy as an individual was someone, the way he expressed his sadness and depression was isolating himself, locking himself into a room, and would eventually dying and being reincarnated in this world. And in this case, Nanahoshi was very close to that. For instance, locking herself off completely. But thanks to Rudy's intervention, how she already opened the door partially for him, and thanks to her in the previous episode already trying to meet everyone else, it is what made way for her to be able to somewhat come back from the brink of the edge of the cliff itself. It's a very dark notion, and I think that the way this series handles these darker themes is very mature, and it shows the quality of the author to be able to do that, to showcase human human emotion in such a realistic and immersive fashion, because it truly does show the weight of an offer to do something like that. I think it really expresses the quality they have to show multiple different angles of emotions, either be happiness, sadness, depression, and even extreme emotional distress. And I think it's one of the key factors of why I loved ReZero so much when I first started reading it and watching it, and I think that's also the same can be said for Mushoku Tensei. It does these themes just so brilliantly, and the way the anime brings it to life with the voice acting, it speaks for itself. You heard at the beginning of this video, it does speak for itself. So one thing I do want to talk about is that her being able to pull herself up out of this was thanks to Rudy and everything that he obtained and having people around him to pull him from that, and Nanahoshi also having a background support that was already established prior to this. But if someone didn't have someone like Rudy in their corner, or someone didn't have anyone, Nanahoshi might not have survived until the end of the series. And it's thanks to Rudy, honestly, that all happened. And it really just goes to show, just thanks to Rudy's growth, he was able to help out someone that was in the exact same situation as him. And one thing I do want to take note of and talk about that this episode does a very good job with is that what if Rudy had just randomly, like just this is a hypothetical, and this is what makes this scene very important. What if Rudy just randomly, within this episode, teleported back to Japan? With his current appearance, his current name, his current memories, his current abilities, he was transported back to Japan. Obviously, he might be able to use magic, he might not, it doesn't really matter. The point of the matter is that if he was to be currently, at this moment in the story, transported to Japan again, you think that he would be happy? No. He has nothing really in Japan to go back to. In fact, he has nothing but despair. And if he was done that way, he would lose Sylphie, he would lose his friends, his family, what he's built for so long, for all of these years, would just be gone like that. And in that moment, Rudy understands what Nanahoshi's going through, because if he was in the exact same circumstances, he probably would do the exact streams that she is currently doing within the story. So overall, Mushoku Tensei is fantastic, and I really just cannot get enough of just how high quality this series is. It honestly always leaves me speechless when you have these just very thought-provoking and deep episodes. It really is peak writing, and truly is a marvel with just how it continuously gets better by episode. But I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed my video, do leave me a like. It does help me out a lot. And with that, Chibi out.